Which is worse, to die or to be the one who survives, to grieve or to be grieved? What if you had to make the choice between saving a world fated to fade or saving the facsimile of a family that is no longer yours? What would you do? I knew the choice I wanted for Verso. It was an easy choice to make because I'm not him. I'm here, safe behind my screen, while I watch the consequences of that choice unfold. But if I were to put myself in Verso's shoes, to replace the Desandre family with my own loved ones, and replace the world of Lumiere with the world I exist in, would I have made the same choice for myself? Would you? In the world of Clair Obscure Expedition 33, where memory fades and the line between dream and death blurs, one character stands out not for his strength or power, but for being an existential question given form. Existentialism is a philosophical lens that asks, what does it mean to exist, when the universe offers no inherent meaning? In the absence of answers, some have decided that it's up to us to find our own meaning. Jean-Paul Sartre argued that humans are condemned to be free, that we must choose our path without divine instruction, not unlike the ending to this game, regardless of the artist's intentions. It is up to the viewer to decide what meaning they will carry with them away from the painting. It is Verso's meaning that I would like to explore, his determination and his despair. For those that may be unfamiliar, some quick background. Verso and his family grew up in a wondrous city named Lumiere. They lived a comfortable life until the fracture. The city was torn apart. A great monolith appeared before them, and a creature known as the Paintress began taking the lives of those whose ages were painted upon the monolith's surface. Verso and his father Renoir, along with an army of volunteers, rushed the monolith to end this meaningless cycle of death. Upon the shores of the monolith, they're confronted by a woman claiming to be Verso's sister Clea, who tells them a devastating truth. The Desandre family has an extraordinary gift to give life to their paintings. The family was pulled into a war with an enemy faction known as the Riders, and Verso Desandre lost his life amidst the conflict. Consumed by grief, Verso's mother Aline entered the painting and created the world and the people within it, including this version of Verso himself. She even goes as far as to bestow immortality upon him. Verso, as we know him, is a painted copy brought to life by the whims of a grieving mother. A mother who is now deteriorating, eroding away due to the prolonged use of this toxic canvas. The real Renoir had entered the canvas world, the nexus event causing the fracture that Verso knew, and was attempting to save his wife by removing her from the canvas. While painted Renoir chose to protect the livelihood of his painted family and the painted world at large by defending the paintress from expeditioners who blame her for their fate and attempt to destroy her in their naivety, Verso initially exhibits ambivalence. Verso works with the painted Renoir, even goes as far as to infiltrate a group of expeditioners. It is there that he meets Julie and falls in love. But this closeness leaves him vulnerable. Julie witnesses his immortality at work, becomes suspicious of him. With fear and betrayal, she and the other expeditioners incapacitate Verso and interrogate him. He will not give them the truth, thinking they won't believe him. How could they believe him? And he doesn't even give them a chance. Instead, he defends himself, killing the expeditioners, including Julie. He gives them a proper burial. In his journal, he tells her, "I have no right to miss you. We deserve to live, all of us. We deserve to exist." Must minds created by man be considered false? Many have pondered this question. Most have understood its complexity, but alas, not all. Long have they thought the answer obvious, but the more they pondered, the more it consumed them whole. What would it do to a person psychologically to know that you were like a fish in a fish tank, curated to be admired by a greater world and at the mercy of those that control every aspect of your life, including your fate? Who is Verso? How much of himself is a reflection of the real Verso, and how much of him is himself? Are his choices truly his own, or are they dictated by his nature? Has his fate already been painted? As painted Verso travels the world, he meets the creatures Esquier and Monoko, old creations and playmates of the real Verso. Painted Verso and the two share very close bonds, but even in the midst of these powerful connections, we see the cracks in Verso's psyche. In one vulnerable moment, Verso asks Esquier, "Does it bother you that I'm not him?" What meaning does Verso attribute to this world? From his perspective, are painted lives deserving of autonomy? Going off of what he had to say to Julie, yes. There are other instances in which we see him reiterate this perspective. At one point, Monoko is questioning his own sense of self, wondering to Verso if Monoko's loyalty to him is because that is who Monoko really is, or if that is how real Verso painted him to be. Verso comforts him and says, "That is just who you are." Monoko tells Verso he is helping him for the real Verso and for the painted Verso's sake. He says, "Verso gave us many new beginnings. He would have wanted a new beginning for you too. You deserve a new beginning if you want one. Every one of us does." And when it is Verso questioning his own sense of self, it is Esquier who comforts him by telling him, "You are my friend. Other Verso was my friend. You are cousins. Same, but each different. Why would that bother me?" Verso's emotions choke him, and he gives a heartfelt thank you to Esquier. But even still, the nature of his life weighs heavily on Verso. One thing he shares with the original version of himself. Early in the game, you encounter a shade of the original Verso's soul in the form of a young boy. He says, her, Aline's, creations are beautiful, but I wish she would understand just what it means for me to paint. I should continue if that were a choice, but I can't. Maybe I should never stop, but we can see how conflicted this shard of Verso's soul is. He attributes meaning to this life, but it pains him to continue living in it. Somewhere along the line, Verso made a choice. The choice to end the world and the lives within the canvas. It's better this way, he tells his sister. Better for who? she asks. At first, he reasons that this act will save the real Descendres, his real mother and sister. And while that is true, that's far from his only reason. Verso remarks frequently how tired he is, a tired that seeps down to his very soul. He tells the party, burying everyone you know while you live on can wear you down a bit. In conversations towards the end of the game, Verso makes it known that one of his main motivators is to lay himself and his tired soul to rest. The real Renoir sees this and comments on this, saying, "Some of Aline's finest work. I regret that it caused you so much pain. I know it seems absurd to offer oblivion as recompense, but perhaps that's the outcome we both desire." I think at this point, it's a good time to assess some of the mental health related symptoms that we observed in Verso thus far. First is the fatigue we already mentioned. And this is not simply feeling tired. This is a tiredness that impacts quality of life, a tiredness that some may describe as low motivation. It's a tiredness so strong it affects a person's behaviors and decisions in ways that others might view as illogical. Social withdrawal. As other characters have commented, Verso chooses to spend a significant amount of time in isolation. He isolates himself from his friends and his family. While he's otherwise friendly and engaging with the party members, he will at times choose to stay on the sidelines, sometimes with his back towards the other members. It's important to note that while people experience withdrawal, it's not because they want to, but rather they feel compelled to. People feel withdrawn from others while simultaneously feeling incredibly lonely. Sadness, hopelessness, and emptiness. Verso admits to Esquier that he feels a bit more woo than we these days. To me, this is endorsing increased feelings of sadness. At one point in the story, there are parallels drawn between Verso and a creature that wears masks, the one that hides truth with lies. And while I believe this is meant to be commentary on Verso's true intentions regarding the fate of the painted world, I find it interesting that when this creature that is supposed to represent Verso is unmasked, that behind these masks of joy and sorrow, there's nothing at all. And I think we can piece these elements together, make an educated guess that he probably struggles with feelings of emptiness too. Verso also seems to be conceptualizing his dilemma in terms of extremes without considering compromise. All or nothing thinking. He expresses hopelessness about the situation, believing that there is no other possible way to move forward but to end it all. And speaking of, that brings us to suicidal ideation. He makes the offhand comment early on that it's natural, wanting to escape a life that you don't want. Much later, Verso admits during a heart-to-heart that he has had these thoughts before and states that it would end a lot of problems for everyone. It's a choice, like any other. This is anecdotal, but as a mental health professional, I work with a lot of people who experience suicidal ideation. The two reasonings I hear from people the most are, coincidentally, the two reasonings we hear from Verso. It would be better for everyone, and I'm tired of living this life. Substance use. Naturally, a person that's confronted with these thoughts will first try to find some way to handle them on their own. And our brains are very good at problem solving, even if the solution makes us suffer in the long run. There's a funny scene where the group discovers that Esquier is harboring a reservoir of wine inside of him. And Verso seems a little miffed about them finding his stockpile, and Esquier tells him, "Stop drinking alone." And this is the only glimpse we have of some potential substance use issues here, but the fact that the drinking is happening alone is an indicator that the substance is being used to mitigate symptoms rather than for pleasure in a social setting. The next few are debatable but worth mentioning: depersonalization and derealization. These are states of disconnection between a person's consciousness and their own body in the case of depersonalization, or their surroundings in the case of derealization. It could be understood as a coping mechanism when trauma is present, and Verso certainly has lots of trauma present. I'm wildly guessing, but without a personal account of Verso's experiences, we simply can't know. These are very strong dissociative experiences, like deja vu cranked up to 10. It is debilitating. So if we were talking about a real person here, not a video game character, we would expect them to be commenting on it, or you'd otherwise observe something was wrong due to their behavior. There's a lot of fantastical elements to this story, and the argument could of course be made that Verso and his world aren't real, but I'm curious about if he would have these symptoms. Everything I mentioned above are symptoms of major depressive disorder: sadness, emptiness, hopelessness, social withdrawal, fatigue, suicidal ideation, even substance use. These are all markers of depression. And I want to take this opportunity to talk about a common misconception about depression, that it means you're just stuck in your room all day and crying, and no, that's rarely the case. A person can outwardly look like they've got it together, they're smiling, they're making friends, they're getting stuff done, but inwardly, they're suffering greatly. If any of what I talked about just now feels familiar to you, please seek a mental health professional in your area, because you don't have to suffer alone. At the end of the game, the player must make a choice, a cruel one. Verso says he's tired. He urges his sister to confront reality, that the painting is not worth her life. His sister insists that she has no life outside the canvas, and from Verso's perspective, he has no life within it. Verso says we're all hypocrites, doing the same thing to one another. It is important to remember for what comes next that Verso sees every being in this canvas as their own person, ones that have the right to live. And that's what makes his decision at the end here such a tragic one. Do you allow Verso his autonomy? Allow him to destroy his own canvas, even if that means destroying the only world and people he knows, so that he and his soul may finally rest, and the real Descendre family will leave the corrosive painting and confront their grief? Or do you condemn his soul to servitude, forced to paint for eternity to keep a world he doesn't want alive? Would you ignore his wishes, force him to continue living, hoping that one day he will find some meaning in this painted world, and perhaps happiness? What would you choose?
I'm not here to fight. But my son, do you know what it means to disappear into nothingness? Have you thought through the consequences? not just for you, or even me, but for them. Their memories, their dreams, their love for each other. Who really is the one painting death, and who paints life instead? We exist and we will exist for as long as she wants. You want to spoil what we've been given. Sometimes we paint the bars of our own prison. Your despair blinds you. You think you're ready to pay the price. But are you willing to let them pay the price for you? May everything be decided before their very eyes, between the bars of their prison, in the shadow of the monolith.